Hi there, my name's Nate. I run Jesus People SF. Today I want to ask the question, when you pray, how can you be confident that God is listening to what you say? And the reason I'm asking is because whether you've been a Christian for one day or 20 years or 50 years or 90 years, or whether you're not a Christian at all, whether you're exploring the faith of Christianity, when you pray to God, it can be hard to consistently believe that He's listening, especially, for instance, if you're praying a particular request over and over and over again, like a spouse or financial breakthrough or some kind of difficulty you're going through that's still in your life and you're trying to get rid of. If these things don't happen when you pray, sometimes your confidence that God is listening can be impaired and injured, and you can get hurt that way. But I want to just use basic philosophy actually to get us to a point where no matter what state of being you're in, whether you're strong in your faith or whether you're full of doubts, where you can always be confident that God hears you. It's actually a little bit of a life hack or a faith hack, you could say. And what we're going to do is just apply the principle of, it's going to be a binary question you're going to ask yourself. Do you believe God exists? Do you believe God exists? If you believe God exists, then there's just a next simple question. If you say a swear word, if you say something mean to your sibling, your family, your spouse, your coworkers, do you believe God hears you? Do you believe that not only does God exist, but that God is present, that God is here, that God can hear you, whatever you say, regardless of if you're praying? Do you believe that? In which case, it's a pretty simple step going forward from there. But I want to use some text to emphasize the importance of believing that God, one, exists, and two, hears you. The New Testament is very clear that you must believe those two things, or you must trust those things in order for Him to act on what you say. So first text is Hebrews 11, verse 6. And it says, without faith, it is impossible to please Him or please God, for the one who comes to God must believe that He exists, or some texts say that God is, and that He rewards those who seek Him. So, in other words, when you come to God for prayer, you have to be able to believe, one, that He exists, obviously, otherwise you're praying to basically an imaginary thing in your own conception of God. And two, that He's able to act on what you say, right? If you're asking Him for something, or even if you're thanking Him, you got to be able to believe that he has some existence in time where He can respond and affect things based on what you're saying. So that's what Hebrews says. You have to believe He is, and that He affects things when you pray. And two, here's James chapter 1, verse 6. He says that when you pray, he's speaking in context of asking God for something and trusting that God will give it. He says, let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. So you can see here that it's very important, according to the New Testament, to not only, when you pray, believe that God is and believe that God acts based on what you ask Him, but you also have to just trust that it is the case and not really have any doubts. So to get us there, we simply ask ourselves that question. Do we believe that God actually exists? And even pagan philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, Socrates, could probably answer in the affirmative. They could probably say that they have this concept of an unmoved mover, this God who at least at the beginning of creation affected things. And so we can say yes, no to the first question. Hopefully your answer is yes, or else why are you praying? Second question you should ask yourself is, do you think God can play gotcha based on your actions in time? Do you think He's watching? Do you think He's observing your deeds before people and in secret in your heart? Do you think He can hear your inward thoughts, your thoughts that no one else can hear but you? Do you think He's there listening? If the answer is yes, then in some sense, God has to listen to what you say, even if he's not going to answer your prayer, right? Even if you're a sworn enemy of God, even if you're the devil himself, God has to listen to everything that happens in creation on some level, right? Because he's got to hold it accountable at the very least. So if God is going to at least play gotcha with you, if he at least has to hold you accountable for what you've done, then he's got to listen to your prayer on some level. So that should give you some confidence to approach God with some sense of like, God, you got to listen to what I say, because if I swear in this prayer, you're going to hold me accountable. If I speak evil of someone that is my neighbor, you're going to listen to that. So of course, you have to listen to what I say. So this should give us a lot of confidence. If we just simply believe that God exists, and two, that God is a moral God, a God of law keeping, a God who keeps records, a God who rewards and punishes. If we're people that can simply acknowledge those two things, then prayer becomes really simple. And so from there, just start speaking according to what you already know is true. You know he has to listen on some level. Even if you're the most sinful person on the face of the earth, even if you're the devil's right-hand man, he has to listen because he has to hold everything in creation accountable. So whether you're God's right-hand man or whether you're the devil's right-hand man or somewhere in between those two things, God has to listen to everything. So if you can simply believe that God exists, if you can simply believe that he acts based on what happens in time, especially if you talk to him, then prayer is so simple. It should just be like a duh thing. And I say this as like a pro tip or something like that. But all of us, whether we've been Christian 100 years or whether we've been Christian 1 year or 1 week or whether we're exploring, we all need to be reminded of the simple things about God and prayer and things like this. So I hope this tip helps you. I hope that you can just begin to just acknowledge those two steps that will get you to a point where you can really trust that God is listening and that God can hear you when you utter your petition and your prayer. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your time. Please hit like and subscribe simply so that this will be promoted by the YouTube algorithm, especially if it was helpful to you. Thanks so much for your time. Feel free to leave a comment. My email should be in the comments or the description of the video. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.